Good afternoon, all of you. It's pretty exciting. Jyoti, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
First of all, congratulations on winning the Entrepreneurship of the Year award yesterday. I just want to ask you, had you attended TiEcons before, or is this the first one?
This is the first time in TiEcon for me.
And what do you think of it?
Yeah, it's a great gathering of entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. So I like that. It's a great forum. I actually always wanted to come to but running a company, building a company. So I just couldn't get the right opportunity and the right chance. Yeah. So I'm excited to come to TiEcon and see, it's great to see all the energy and excitement here.
Yeah, the energy level is absolutely incredible, having so many entrepreneurs. Yeah. In fact, when I started my first company, this is Exodus Communications way back in 1993, 1994. That is when TiE was just starting. And we were actually the direct recipients of the benefits from TiE. I mean, this is the time when typically the Indian entrepreneurs were having a hard time actually getting funding. And we were very fortunate that we had Kanwal Rekhi and Suhas Patil and Prabhu Goyal and some of these well-known successful entrepreneurs at that time who took interest in our company and did the initial seed funding, which is what resulted in later on getting other kinds of funding as well. So in any case, glad to have you here. Okay. And even though we have not met before, we have obviously a lot of common friends. One thing that many people resonated is the fact that they all know that I'm going to be talking to you this afternoon. They all said, Jyoti is a very genuine guy. Okay. And he's a very, very simple guy. He's not changed, right? And I mean, I can see, based on some initial conversation, that you are one of that, and please be that way.
Okay. Good advice. Makes sense.
So let's start with your journey, right? So, based on everything that I have read, it seems to me that right after you finished your undergrad degree, right, within a few years, pretty much you were like about to start your own company, and you had some H1 visa issues and so on and so forth, which is pretty fascinating to me because especially when you start these enterprise class of companies. I mean, when we started our companies, we were like in mid-30s, right? And it seems like you were like in your 20s when you started your company in 2008. So how did this whole dream of starting this company, all of that, could you just quickly take us through the dream and the journey of your App Dynamics?
Sure. So for me, I did want to start a business and run a business, since college. I grew up in a small town in Rajasthan where my dad had a small, like a mom and pop store kind of business. And so I've seen business up close. At least even if it's a small business, I've seen business up close. And it's like growing up over there, every weekend you would go on the shop and help your dad and things like that, right? So I always liked business. I studied computer science and IIT, and I liked tech, and to me, like, the combination of those was really appealing. And that's when I was like, okay, if I have to start a company and do work in startups and all that, let me come to Silicon Valley. So then after IIT, I started applying for like small companies, startups here to come here to Silicon Valley, and got here on H1B. And I wanted to start, I was like, you start companies when you get like this kind of burning feel about solving some problem, right? So one day you run into something, some problem, that you're using something and you say, this sucks, someone has to do this better. Or like you are working somewhere and it's like no one is doing this, someone has to do this job better. And you start like, okay, someone has to solve this, there is a opportunity here kind of thing, right? So you have to find that, some excitement, passion about some burning desire to solve some problem. So I wanted to do a business always, and I had that burning desire a few times. But I couldn't quit my job and start it because I was on H1. And on H1, it's not that easy to start a company. Like you have to wait for green card, and there's a long wait, especially for people from India and China. The wait is long to get a green card, right? So that was the frustration part. I have talked about it, and I tried to shed some light on this topic, so most people are not even aware of that. Like people are like, what's this whole issue, right? So that it's kind of unfortunate that that's even an issue of any kind, right? If someone, a smart engineer somewhere, wants to start a company and create jobs here, why would you make it hard, right? So, so I hope that gets better and fixed. But that was the challenge. And then I got my EAD, where you can, legally quit your job and do things, right? So, and around at the same time, I was having this burning feeling again, like this is a problem, someone needs to solve this. So I was working on in my previous in a startup that was acquired by another company, and it felt like that market and that problem space.
You were not a founder of that company.
I wasn't. I was working there as an engineer there, and I was working there as an engineer. That company was acquired, and I was just having that strong conviction that everyone is building so much software in the world, and every business will be building more and more software, and someone needs to watch and monitor and analyze that software in case something goes wrong. And I looked around, and there was nothing really good. So then you start like, okay, if someone has to solve this, why not let me try it? Like, because if I don't do it, someone else will do it anyways.
Yeah.
Because it's a problem that's begging to be solved.
Yeah.
Right? Once you start getting that feeling, so I said, okay, let's go and start. Maybe I'll try and start doing a company on this.
Yeah.
And I started pitching to investors, started building the product, and that's how the company got started.
Awesome. So you had this burning desire, and you had tried back in India itself. You had tried doing some little things, and that burning desire was always there for you to start your own company.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. So, 2007, 2008 timeframe, right? As I recall, this whole application performance management, this is the APM part of the business. Generally, that was very hard, right, to get funding, and because there were so many companies that were trying to solve this problem. And to really get attention from any venture capitalists to get the funding was a very difficult thing, and especially given the fact that 2008 was also an economic downturn. I mean, it looks like you not only got funding, but you also got funding from absolute top-tier VCs, and you've also written a paper that I just read advising entrepreneurs as to why they should attempt to actually go to top-tier VCs rather than going into tier 2 or tier 3 VCs. So you want to share a little bit of what process you went through?
Got it. So yes, it was hard. It was a hard time to try to convince people that invest in a company that does performance monitoring. Like, performance monitoring sounds like a boring kind of thing. Like, people will be, why do we need another company on this space? So, and I got rejections from a lot of VCs, and I pitched to about 25 or so, and it took me some time to refine the story and even learn. It was
just you, or you had?
It was just me.
Just you.
It was just me. So like some VCs will reject just because it was just me. It's like we don't invest in solo founders kind of thing, right? But so that happens. But I was such a newbie to this. I've never met like a VC as such before I was pitching this.
Right.
So I started pitching to a lot of them, and people will say no, or like, you're not ready, or all sort of things, right? And then it started to, the pattern started to become clear that there are three things they're looking for. That one is like, if you want to get money from the bigger VCs, you have to make a very good case on why it could be $1 billion company. That the big VCs are not interested in creating a $50 million company or $100 million company or a $300 million company, which are amazing companies, right? It's amazing businesses to have, but they are not interested in that. So you have to have a strong case of why this could be $1 billion company, right? The second is like, you have to show some external validation. Like, if I just go and say, this is a problem that needs to be solved, and I have a way to solve this which is better than any other existing ways, they would give me like, maybe one meeting, but they need to hear it from others. So initially, when in my pitch, I wasn't talking about like what's a validation. Then I started talking to a lot of customers. I started finding customers on LinkedIn and other places, and I will go and talk to them, and then I will write down like what I'm hearing from them as kind of a validation book.
Even though you didn't know these customers.
I didn't know these customers.
That's pretty good.
So I'll find them through like you just hustle your way to find these customers, right? So that was like the validation part was important.
And you pitched your solution to these customers, prospects.
Yeah, these prospects, yeah. And then the third thing you VCs look for is like once you convince them it's a large market, you do have, there's a validation on the problem and the solution in some way, then it all comes about you, right? Just the team, the founders. Because so early, like, should you invest in that founder? So you have to package yourself and convince them that you are the person in some way, right? So once I kind of figured that, like then the story became more streamlined, or the whole package became more streamlined. And then suddenly I had interest from a lot of VCs.
Wow.
So it's like, it's like the switch flipped like this, like, no interest to interest from a lot of VCs. And then I had to go and pick at that time. So the blog I wrote about the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, I don't think I mean that you have to go to tier 1 only, right? You as a founder, you're starting a company, the first thing you need is capital. So you get capital from whoever you can get capital. But if you have choices, then what do you do? Is what really about. So if you have choice, I would say like, there is some advantage of the brand recognition of bigger firms, right? So that you should try to get. Not at the cost of everything else though. Like, there are many factors you get out of your investors, but brand recognition is one, and which could be very useful in terms of recruiting people and all of that.
So I guess the message to the entrepreneur is, don't shy away or back off if some of these venture capitalists basically reject you. Use that as a feedback mechanism to go back and see how you can fix your idea, your market size, your opportunity, all of that, and go back. Did you go back to the same VCs later on?
Yeah, I did go back to some of them later on. I think it's very important for as an entrepreneur to ask the VCs like why, what do you think is missing? And many times the investors won't give you a clear answer. But I think and you have to. They won't give you an answer sometimes also because they don't want to hurt your feelings or don't call your baby ugly kind of thing, right? Some investors are good. They will give you very blunt feedback. Some investors won't. So then you almost have to make sure that they feel comfortable giving you feedback, because that feedback loop is great. Like, you hear from 25 investors what they don't like, and you start seeing the patterns on, and it's not just from a raising the capital perspective. It's also useful for you to decide, like, is this really something you want to do for the next 5 years, 10 years of your life, right?
Yeah. So eventually you did create a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity and market exit, right? And you just had an exit for multi-billion dollars, which is pretty huge, and solving a problem for customers, and you created lots of jobs as well, which is a pretty exciting ride since 2008, 2009, since you started the company. So can you take us through some of the most difficult or the darkest moments that you experienced, right, during the 7-8 years of journey, and some of the brightest moments, right, where you felt, wow, I'm glad I started this company? Sure.
So, that's the thing about startups. So AppDynamics was very successful, and sometimes people do think everything was perfect in AppDynamics always, right? It's never the case. Every startup has, as you know, is ups and downs, and bright moments, dark moments. A lot of dark moments are like in the earlier stages, because earlier stages, the dark moment means you would not survive. In the later stages, it would mean like, how fast you would grow and all that. So the earlier stages are more like life and death kind of dark moments, which are running out of cash or not, right? So I started in 2008, and 2009 was like there was almost no venture funding going on. 2010 was just starting to open up there. Like, so I had to maneuver cash through it, like, so I don't run out of cash and the business will shut down, right? So, but the product market.
If I may ask, how much did you raise in Series A?
Series A was $5.5 million. So I had,
You had enough money.
enough money, but I had to still be very careful about like if I can't get Series B.
Because you knew the market had crashed.
Yes, the market was horrible. Like that the 2009 was the worst market to raise any kind of thing. 2010 was just opening up, right? So those times are hard. The product market fit is very hard. Like in the product market fit, it took us about 18-20 months to get a good product market fit. The initial assumptions were not right, and I had to change things, and that's. It's scary. Like you may run out of business at any point there. Right? So the main thing I learned is that it's really the way to operate something like this is focus on one milestone at a time. And like a milestone is get the company off the ground, raise some capital, build a founding team. Then second milestone is like find product market fit, and start getting initial set of customers. The third milestone is get like maybe like a $10 million kind of revenue ARR. So you figure out your go-to-market model, pricing model, all of that stuff. Then like it's kind of the press the gas and kind of grab market share by creating a go-to-market machine. That's to me is like the $10 million to say $70-80 million kind of phase. And then the next milestone becomes like, okay, now you have that and you want to sustain growth, so you need to expand your product portfolio, create multiple products, become platform. That becomes the next thing. So it's almost like, I look at like, every time you go into a new phase like that, or the new milestone, you stumble. And it's like the beginning is all bad, because it's like you make mistakes, you don't know, and then you kind of iterate your way and figure out. So that's what I've learned. Like, every time you go to the new thing, you'll most likely not know what to do right away, or you will do things, you'll make mistakes and stumble and all that, but you have to just go through that.
Better to make a decision than not making a decision, like what Neeraj was saying this morning.
Exactly.
So during this product market fit exercise, right, were you at any point of time, did you feel that your product was more a nice to have product versus a must have product in the market, and you had to make some adjustments to turn that nice to have into a must have? Or you had customers who were seeing phenomenal value from the product right from day one?
Yeah, I think it's really comes down to the value. I do think that the nice to have versus must have is a little bit of a, it's a bit overrated in terms of figuring that out. I do think is the value part is the most important thing. Like, are the customers finding value?
Right.
And and how much value is it? Like, if you can make a very simple logical case that you will get $100,000 worth of value out of this, and you have to spend $20,000, and they believe the case, and because it's true, then it doesn't matter it's nice to have or must have, really, right? So because the value proposition is so high. So my focus very early on was that, like, what is the definition of product market fit? To me, the definition of product market fit was when I figured out the value prop of like the business case of why someone should buy.
Correct.
And that was, once we figured that out, it's like, for some people our product was must have, and for some people it was nice to have, because some people had alternative ways of doing things. And they say like, I don't really need this, but we will tell them, hey, but if you don't really need it, but look at the value. Yeah. So that's kind of thing, right?
Interesting. Let's switch gears on the people related issues, right? So take us through, especially during the early days of your life, the hiring process. Was it hard for you to attract the top talent, and how did you manage all that?
Yeah, it's, hiring for startups is the hardest thing in many ways. Like, it was hard for me to attract top talent. We were like a young startup, and in the early days, the market wasn't very good, so people were a little bit scared of joining startups. Like 2000, it's the kind of the psychology there. 2008, 2009, everyone's stock portfolio, 401k crashed 40-50%, and everyone was trying to be more conservative. So just that fact made it slightly harder to recruit people in a startup in the early years. But recruiting gets easier when you start bringing like good people. Then it's like, few good people will attract more good people, and then more good people. It's convincing your first few is always hard. So
these first few are from your own network, people that you had worked with?
Yes, some of them were, yes. I would say some of them, the very first few were in the network that I worked with.
And then they helped to bring other set of people.
And then you go and, I always believe, like, if you can't solve something through your network, you just go and kind of brute force it. So you go and try to hire 100 people and maybe you can convince 2 of them.
Yeah.
So, but it's a lot of work to try to recruit 100 to get, that 2 out of 100.
Yeah.
But I would rather do that than not hire.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah. So yours is also a very interesting part of the story because you are on a path towards IPO, right? You're almost like a week away or so. And in the meantime, you got an offer and you took the exit. And I'm sure, I mean, I've gone through this also multiple times. As the company is growing, right, it's obvious that others would be interested in acquiring you at various stages of the company.
Yep.
So obviously not taking those offers and then going through this whole IPO process and then eventually taking the offer. So share with us the whole process and your thoughts on, what is right and what is not right.
Sure. Well, I would say it depends on the situation, what's right versus not right. But it's for us. The first time I had an offer for acquisition was when we were really small. We were only about like 10 million or so in revenue. And I had an offer for $300 million.
Wow.
And it was really hard to say. That was like the hardest decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Like it was hard to say no. Like, I was a young founder guy and it's, that's a big offer.
Correct.
But I was also very convinced that I'm getting multiple of revenue of some kind, right? But I could easily see that my revenue is going to at least triple next year.
I see.
And probably triple or double the year after. And I with very strong degree of conviction. And I said, okay, in 2 years, I would be valued much more than that.
I see.
And so why do it? And because the visibility ahead of like just in 2 years wasn't making it. If someone made an offer for it's a 4 or 5 years ahead of visibility of what you could be valued, then it becomes slightly different, right? But also it seems like it's a large it was a large problem that it was better for us to do it more independently at that early stage instead of becoming part of a larger company, right? So that was the factor there. And then along the way there were a few offers that came and then we said no. Why did we take this offer in the end, instead of going IPO, right? Because first of all, as a shareholder and in terms of like responsibility for our shareholders, the price made sense. It's not that we took the first offer, by the way. They gave us first offer, we said no. They gave us a second offer, we said no, and they gave a third offer, which we said, okay, well, this seems reasonable.
All happening during the IPO process?
That all happening during that
Wow.
process. And it happened very fast. But the reason we decided to take it because it's, if you probably read about it, this was the highest multiple ever paid for a private company, right? Because it was a very strategic fit. So we thought like our product would be in great place, and the synergy working with Cisco would actually allow more velocity, more resources to what we wanted to achieve. And financially, it was the right outcome for our shareholders, right? So these are never easy decisions. We are not looking to sell the company. Like we are not running a sales process to sell the company. We were really looking to go public, and the offer came and it made sense and we did it, right?
Interesting. So would we have some time for question and answers? Maybe 1 or 2. I have a couple more, but if audience has any questions, please, can you please come to the front? And there is a mic.
Hi, I'm Karnveer Mundre from Bangalore. I wanted to know about your first few hiring processes, how it happened, and
Can you identify your name?
Karnveer Mundre from Bangalore. I wanted to know more about your initial hiring people. Like, did you give them like stock options, or how did you entice them to be with the company, stay with the company, from moving from you as a single person to the initial team, and how did you make them believe and stick with you?
Got it. Okay. So yes, in Silicon Valley, you have to give stock options and meaningful stock options, because you can't really recruit good people without that. So that's a given. But it's not just about that. Like, you have to get them very excited about the vision of the company, and you have to get excited about the people and the team. Like, they have to work with the team there. They have to also, get excited about what kind of culture this company would have. Like, so would they enjoy working there or not? So it's not just compensation, right? Compensation you have to do well, and stock options are a big part of that always. But you want people who are like equally passionate about kind of building it together with you, and that's the only way. Like, so you have to excite them. If they're not excited about it, that's fine. right? So it's like you have to find people who are very excited about, okay, this is a great opportunity, this is a great problem to solve, and we do have, like, who start developing the same kind of burn that as you have as a founder of trying to solve it. And that's, without that, they won't stick around. You can't get them there.
So people don't join just for the sake of options.
Yeah.
They join because they're going to be solving a important problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Just identify your name.
Sure.
Hi, Jyoti. This is Akshay Krishnaya. Now that you got all the money, what kind of companies and entrepreneurs are you planning to back? Is there a specific domain in mind, or any particular attributes?
Well, let's say I'm looking to. I'm not a VC or a proper investor in any kind, right? So I do make personal investments, and I do make personal investments for primarily the entrepreneurs I really like entrepreneurs who are like feel very passionate and really driven to go after a very large market. That's always the first thing. Like for me, it's like large market, really good entrepreneur, and some kind of a sustainable advantage of some kind, either technology or team's background or talent level or prior experience, whatnot, right? It's really that, like large market, really good entrepreneur that I want to help, because for me, I'm not looking to invest for the sake of investing. I also like to help who I'm investing in, right? So that's what it is.
Yeah. So the question is, do you want, I mean, now that you had this exit and all, right, do you want to go off and become a venture capitalist, or you want to go solve another problem and build a company? Because I saw on the LinkedIn you're already asking for some UI engineers.
Yeah, no, I like to solve problems and build companies. So I think I'll do that again, and do that and maybe a few interesting problems instead of solving one. Maybe. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do, but I do experiment with a few interesting problem areas and ideas that I'm excited about.
Interesting. So, did you have? So if you, while they pass the mic, so if you have to redo, right, this whole 9 years of journey that you went through, what would you change?
It's a very good question. It's if I have to do the same thing again,
Correct.
I'm pretty sure there will be the broad milestones are the same, and I probably have some advantage of that. I've learned on each of the milestones what to do, but I'm still pretty sure that I would still stumble on each of the milestones for the new place, for whatever the new company is, because it's very different. The market is different, the people are different. Like many times things are about like who you have in your team, like you do things around them and based on their skill set and all. The competitive environment will be different. But I really look at, like, one thing I'll do the same is to go look at this in the same way. Like, you got to make sure you have some capital in the business. You have to make sure you get a really good product market fit. You get a really good founding team. Then you get your kind of the kind of your lighthouse early customers. Then you get your 10 million revenue year milestone. Then you scale to get to 70, 80 million. All of that is kind of broadly the same. But I'm also very convinced that it will go through the same kind of learnings and stumbles and all of that again. And so that's
So maybe you can compress from 9 years to perhaps 7 years or 6 years.
And startup is a lot about like really good execution. That's all it is, right? But at the same time, you also be lucky in whatever you do. So you gotta, maybe if I'm doing it again and maybe I'm not as lucky, and maybe it will take, instead of 9 years, it may take 11 years. Who knows, right? So, but I would like to compress it.
Hi.
One last question from audience.
Sure. My name is Ravi Pothorlanka. I'm CEO of a company that had a recent exit. But my experience has been, it's one of those unnatural, crazy acts, starting a company. It's so scary, a lot of dark times, and you somehow make it through, right? So, but to see people like you and BV on the stage have been through these few times and been successful, it's very inspiring. If you had to give an advice or give 2 or 3 pieces of advice to budding entrepreneurs, what would that be? Both from BVU and Jyoti yourself.
Okay. Advice to budding entrepreneurs. I think the number one thing I tell everyone is commit at least 8 to 10 years. And that's, a lot of times I see budding entrepreneurs who think it's only like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year kind of thing. It's not like a job that, you do for a couple of years and then you go to another job, which happens in Silicon Valley a lot. If you want to build a company of value, a meaningful company, it's a 8 to 10 year commitment. So if you're not ready to commit like 8 to 10 years to something, you won't be able to build a meaningful company. So that's normally my first advice. The second advice I already talked about is like, it is hard. Like there's a lot of crazy things. It's just a lot of crazy moments, and there's a lot of hardships and all kind of things, right? Is to what I talked about, the one milestone at a time kind of thing. Like just focus on, how do you reach to the next level? How do you reach to the next level? And you will stumble and fall and all that, but just keep going to the next level. Once you get to the next level, then you can figure out, okay, now how do I get from level 2 to level 3? How do I get from 3 to 4? Instead of like worrying too much about everything.
Yeah. I normally have 3 things that I normally focus on. By listening to the customers, this whole product market fit, because I've found that that's one of the biggest challenging things, right? And sometimes, it's easy to get that product market fit, but many a times you have to be listening to the customer to fine-tune your offering or even product features and functionalities to ensure, right, that you bring a decent set of a product into the market. So that's number one. Number 2 is, no matter how cautious you are in hiring, you will always make mistakes. And when you make mistake, don't wait for too long. Just get rid of the person as quickly as possible, right? Otherwise, the longer you keep, it just is negative and infectious, right? And the third is the financial discipline. I mean, that's something that I take it very seriously. How you manage your cash. I mean, as he was saying, you never know when the situation gets worse, right? So if you have that basic discipline of managing your cash, you don't have to re-educate your employees, because if employees get used to the spending pattern, it will be very difficult to undo that. Yeah, so those are the 3 things that Anyway, so I think he already asked the last question that I was going to ask, and I really thank you. This is really wonderful. Please give a big hand to Jyoti and wish him all the best. And I'm sure he'll be around to answer any more questions that you may have. Thank you, Jyoti.